Welcome to the Writer Muses, where I give you my thoughts and ideas on film, TV, books, games, and life in general. These reviews are adaptations of my blog posts that you can find at my website, which you can find in the doobly-doo below. Hi, it's the Writer Muses here today. I'm going to be doing a review of Schindler's List by Steven Spielberg, one of the greatest movies I think that he's ever made. Liam Neeson plays Oscar Schindler, and there's a great supporting role of Isaac Stern, played by Ben Kingsley. Today I'm going to be going through and talking about sort of their roles and sort of how I feel that their performances went, as well as sort of the understated nature of the film, and sort of how that I feel that plays out. I also want to talk about the complexity of Schindler's character and Liam's performance in regards to that. Another real powerful part of the film is how sort of terrifyingly real it is, and obviously that's what was happening at the time. But I think Spielberg doesn't sort of shy away from that, so we can talk a little bit about that, and also sort of how another really important thing that he doesn't sort of shy away from is sort of the denial that was, part of what was going on at the time, and that he brings to the film. Also, the powerful imagery that he uses throughout the film is something else I'm going to have a look at. There's also a really interesting sort of mirroring that Spielberg uses between the two characters of Amon and Oscar, so I'm going to touch on that as well. I also want to talk about some issues that I've got towards the end of the film with the downfall of Oscar and some other problems that I have throughout the film. Alright, let's have a look.
Bring them over a round of drinks.
So this is Liam Neeson, who plays Oscar Schindler. You may know him from Kingsley or Star Wars Episode 1, but he is quite a lot different here from Qui-Gon. He plays an industrialist in Poland during World War II, and he's trying for the third time to set up a money-making venture. As the film progresses, he is much more... he's making much more than money in his factory that he sets up.
I'm looking for Itzhak Stern.
This is the first scene where we see Oscar and Isaac
Stern or not?
meet. It's sort of a background, I guess, to their entire relationship. Isaac is played by Ben Kingsley, who's an extremely well-known actor. You should know him from things like Gandhi or House and Sand Fog. He's a contact for Oscar to Jewish money. This connection becomes much more than that as the movie progresses.
A good company, you think?
Modestly successful.
I know nothing about enamelware. Do you?
I was just the accountant.
Simple engineering, though, wouldn't you think? Change the machines around. Whatever you do, you can make other things, couldn't you? Field kits, mess kits, army contracts.
You can see the positioning here that Spielberg does Oscar at a much higher level to Isaac, and this is sort of the way that their relationship is portrayed throughout the entire movie. Very understated by Ben on one side, and full of movement and bravado by Liam on the other side.
You don't have any money.
And it's this joining of these two characters that has become so important for both of their success throughout the film.
Yeah. Investors. You must have contacts.
So the film's directed by Steven Spielberg, who everyone should know who that is, but if you're unfamiliar with some of his other great films, Saving Private Ryan and Jaws, he brings his best skills to the fore here. He weaves a visually powerful tale around his leads, and he gets brilliant performances out of everyone and captures one of the most powerful stories ever told on film. He most certainly deserved the Oscar that he won for this one. So much of the power of this film comes from the understated way that everything is told. The opening scenes that we're seeing here, the setup of the ordinary world, is a prime example of this. Oscar is setting himself up as the friends of the Nazi officers. The film lets us see the night unfold in front of us. We see Oscar flashing his cash around and getting everyone on side. The meaning of this is clear, but we are never told what we should be thinking. The concept of show don't tell plays out throughout the rest of the film with devastating power. This is probably the best example of the understatement and just letting the film come through with us being able to see without being sort of told what's going on. Schindler's just rescued Stern from being picked up incorrectly by the Nazis and sent off on a chain. Throughout this scene, you've heard them announcing, "Your luggage will follow you, your luggage will follow you," and just watch what happens as we leave the scene and pan across. This is just absolute brilliant filmmaking. We literally don't need to hear anything. Just seeing this is all that you need. What's happening here is this lady's come to visit Oscar to try and get her parents a job with him, as she's heard that the factory's a haven and no one dies here. Oscar was very happy to see her to start off with, but when she mentions this, he turns furious and is very angry about this because this threatens his relationship with the Nazis and the position that the factory holds. He flies off the handle to her and then comes in and confronts Stern, and just Stern's understatement and his reaction here to the anger of Oscar is why I think that he sort of portrays the understatement himself that the film is trying to carry. Kingsley plays this little Jewish man who runs Oscar's factory with aplomb. So simply nods and murmurs an apology here, sort of smiles slightly, and the reaction speaks so large and it's so much more powerful than if he said what he was actually thinking. These two scenes are so powerful as they're the only two scenes where we see all three levels of Schindler's character in the entire movie. So on the outer, we have Schindler here trying to make money off the cheap Jewish labour. We see him and Stern talking about the cost of Polish labour as compared to Jews, and the comment is something like, "Why would he pay for a Pole when he can get a Jew at half the price?" This is maybe where he starts, but it quickly becomes the facade that he wears for the Nazis. He then moves to saving Jews, and he does this by turning a blind eye to what Stern's doing, but he knows what's going on. Oscar is then forced to take an active role when Amon, who we see here, played by Ralph Fiennes from other movies he's been in, the Grand Budapest Hotel or the English Patient, and when his character's introduced. So Amon has taken over management of the concentration camp where Oscar's factory has moved to. So the third level of Oscar's character is this his active subversion of tyranny. He sees the terror that the Jews live with every day, and he takes action to to save more and keep his existing workforce safe. So you see this right here. He's just announced the names of the lady's parents to Stern, and we instantly see it played out here, where they get pulled out of line at the concentration camp to be saved from the work and brought across to the factory. And he gives the watch to Stern that he uses to bribe the guy. So all three, and we don't see those things at all throughout the rest of the movie all together at once. Coupled with the understatement that's embodied by Stern is the reality of the film. And it's terrifyingly real. It lets the horror speak for itself and comes through loud and clear. Hand in hand with this is denial. At every stage there is denial both openly and to themselves about what is actually going on. The best example of this for me is a discussion that happens one night between Jewish females in a concentration camp. They refuse to believe that the gas chambers are real. Their argument is, why would they kill us when we are their workforce? If they stopped for a moment to actually look what had happened in the lead up to their current situation, they will perhaps see the gas chambers were a logical end to their current predicament. Denial is so important. As humans, I feel that we have a tendency to equate the current situation to something worse to make us feel better about the current situation, regardless of how bad it is. I believe that this stems from two things. One, we are generally hopeful of the future regardless of the facts. We don't think bad things will happen to us, and it is possible for things to get better. Second, if we actually look at the reality of the situation, we may often feel hopeless, and denial is important for our mental stability. Spielberg realizes that the most powerful tool in his arsenal as a film director is the image, and he uses this well throughout. But there are two parts of the film that are mind-blowingly good. The first is the girl in the red coat. The film, as you can see, is shot in black and white, which adds weight to the subject matter and gives it the age that it wouldn't have had otherwise. I really like the choice. I really like the choice as it allowed him to do the girl in the red coat scene, which would have been impossible otherwise. As we can see here, the Warsaw ghettos are being emptied. The young girl is separated from her family, and you see her wandering through the carnage around her. Just going to jump forward so we can see that. Here she is. The viewer of the scene is Oscar from a hill in the distance. The girl's coat is the only thing in colour in the entire scene, so you never lose sight of her. We've got minutes more of this, but the filmmaking is masterful. The second scene that uses imagery like this and uses it extremely well is the final scene at Oscar's grave. The survivors from his factory and their families come along to place stones on the headstone. It is so impactful. For me, it did two things. First, it made it real. These were the actual people that Oscar saved. Second, it made me realise that at the time the film was made, in 1993, there were still so many of these people still alive. It made me realise how recently these events had occurred. The mirroring of Amon and Oscar is the next thing I'm going to talk about. Amon is such an important character in the film. He is used to shine a light on Oscar and show us what Oscar could have been. Oscar could still have made his money if he didn't have his secondary and tertiary motives. Without these motives, how different to Amon would he really have been? Oscar's influence on Amon is spectacular. Without Oscar, so many more Jews would have died under his vicious rule. Oscar's influence even has Amon leaping to his defence upon Oscar's arrest. I do not believe that Amon would have lifted a finger for anyone in the situation. This is the end of the film. The war's over, and Oscar's just spoken to the guards and workers, and he's now walking out to his car to escape, as he is under threat of capture after being a member of the Nazi Party and supporting the war effort. As he moves towards the car, he slowly breaks down about all of the things he kept and equates them to the number of lives he could have saved. On face value, I felt that this was way too much, as we see Oscar sobbing as Stern comforts him. One reason that I didn't like it was because it took away from the powerful understatement that had been so pervasive for the rest of the film. Coming back to it now and thinking about it further, I think that the scene is better than I gave it credit for. I think that the message of the scene coming to the fore parallels Oscar's motives coming to the fore. So I'm going to address the problems that I see in the film. There's almost none to speak of. There's only one minor issue that I had, and it's with this scene here. Oscar is preparing to set up the factory with Stern and the other investors here. They're talking about the arrangements now. The problem is that Stern and the investors are the ones with the agency. This is stage 3 of the hero's journey, called The Refusal of the Call to Adventure, and Stern and the investors are the one who refuse the call to adventure, and not Oscar, who's our hero in the traditional sense of the hero's journey. The effect is that we don't have as big a downbeat, and then the upbeat that we have as we cross the first threshold isn't as big as it could have been because of the way the agency isn't correctly with the hero here. But I think that this is also a very important part of the story to tell, where at this point during history and during the war, the Jewish investors did have a lot of power here, and that's what the scene is sort of talking about. So I think Spielberg's had to balance what traditionally would have happened here in terms of the hero's story, the journey, with history, and to be able to show this decline in power. And so I think that the scene's fine, so I haven't taken anything away. Overall, I absolutely love this film. It's one of my favourites. 10 out of 10.